Thank you very much for joining us on today's NetTalk. Welcome, everybody. Today's NetTalk is based on our annual theme 2025, which centers on Sustainable Development Goal 10, equal opportunities, solutions, and self-determination in Tanzania. Throughout the year, we're engaging with voices from the field to explore how global development goals intersect with the lived realities of people, like today's conversations on the sudden freeze in the USAID funding. This has sparked a number of concerns, not just globally, but also locally, especially due to development areas, programs of humanitarian ones. And with a focus on Tanzania, we shall examine the real-world implications of this withdrawal, particularly in terms of employment, public health, and more specifically, reproductive health and/or HIV services. I am honored today to welcome 4 outstanding experts on this topic from Tanzania, tuned in, 2 researchers from the Economic and Social Research Foundation, that is James Paul Kasindi, a researcher and digital systems administrator of the Research Foundation with many years of experience, Richard Gordon Ngilangwa, who is also a research fellow. They're going to shed some light on this matter and give us a broad aspect. In contribution, there will be 2 other experts who are field experts from Njombe region, both working with the USAID-funded program Afya Yangu Southern Program under the Sumasesu NGO. And those are Hekela Charles, a project coordinator for the Imarisha Afya HIV project, and Ezekiel Mgaya, who serves as the CBHA's project coordinator. We would have given you a round of applause, but we're online. Just take it this way. Now, I want to start by setting the stage. And for that, I would welcome James and Richard from the Research Foundation to give us a broad picture of what is going on. So, Richard, James, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dorcas, for this opportunity to come and share some of our experiences. I think I'll start off and then James will join in. I think as we're all aware, the US suspended its aid on the 20th of January this year. And initially it was a 90-day suspension, but subsequently, I think when it came to April 2022, they decided to continue it for 30 more days. But what does it mean for countries like our own? I think the purpose of them initially wanting to suspend the aid was based on the fact that they said they wanted to reevaluate and realign some of the programs that they were supporting throughout the world. And for Tanzania, we've known that they've been operating for a number of decades. And they have contributed over 7 billion USD in aggregate over the years. And more recently, we've seen them contribute in a number of sectors: education sector, the governance sector, health, agriculture, and infrastructure. And 70% what they had been contributing more recently was going to the health sector, followed by education and followed by agriculture. From an analysis that we had done, we envisioned that it would have had some sort of impact. There's a macroeconomic impact that we thought it would have. On an annual basis over the last 4 years, when you look on average, we did the calculations and we saw that they bring about 450 million USD annually. And in that sense, having that not injected into the economy going forward would definitely have some macroeconomic impact, would definitely cause some physical pressures, which would require the government in some way to do some sort of adjustment and realignment to cover that gap. But there are also other aspects of the social sector, social service provision, where we see a great deal of potential impact, given that we already said that 70% of this aid was going into the health sector. So there are claims out there, but they're unsubstantiated claims. This is just me painting the picture. And given that research has not been done substantially, so it's just painting the picture, but there are unsubstantiated claims out there that one, perhaps there would be disease-related deaths, an increase of disease-related deaths as a result of withdrawal of funds from the health sector. We have seen organizational shutdowns. We know a lot of initiatives in the country, such as initiatives in Kigoma region with the Organization for Migration dealing with refugees. A lot of people have been let go. And there's also an envisioned impact on the vital supplies being held up. And so in the health sector, we envision that there would be a great deal of impact. But maybe let me not preempt the next sections of what we're supposed to discuss, but just maybe just to give a general overview of the government's reaction from our end. One, there was acknowledgement by the government that, yes, it would have a definite impact. But two, the Prime Minister had suggested a way of diversifying now the kind of aid that we get to minimize or to mitigate the impact. I think at this point, let me just stop here as an abstract picture and then welcome also James to provide any additional comments or remarks with regards to that.
Thank you, Richard. I think Richard has gone through all the sectors that critically impacted the 5 most funded projects, counting from the health sector, education sector, the culture sector, the economic development, democracy, and governance. Seeing the 3 top budgeted sectors from the USAID funding, rating the health sector being the topmost, receiving almost 70% of the budget, means it's the highly affected because it employs more of the professionals and provide more services to the recipients of the services, like people receiving drugs on the fight against HIV/AIDS, people receiving assistance on the maternal health, and also the child support. Highly impacted the heart of the funding. But at the same time, you see the great loss of jobs. Some of these NGOs that employed doctors and other experts. So the shut means they are at home now, waiting for the next step of the freeze. At the same time, you like what as my colleague said, the loss of the 450 million USD a year means a lot in the circulation of the currency within the country. So that means we are impacted, but we need just to justify this with data, where we need to have a deeper assessment of the extent of damage and impact of the freeze. We understand that the USAID and the US government has yet to release the way forward, but at least they issued another more 30 days of the assessment of the structure and the way they will organize and how they will go to cut down more of the projects and programs that they see they are not in line with their policy. And not just that the impact is touching only the Tanzanian and the African context, but this impact is touching even the US itself. For example, there's one of the research institution that was doing research and trying to advise the USAID on how to effectively and efficiently spend in terms of the foreign aid. They have lost almost 179 million USD from the support from the USAID. So you see it's a trickle-down effect from the US itself down to the African countries and specifically to Tanzania. So maybe we need to have like in our recommendation, the paper that we have issued before, we need to have a detailed assessment to see into every sector, like how much effect itself has happened into the specific sector. Thank you.
Yeah, just to add a little bit where James had left off, I know a lot of our concentration has been on the health side, but with respect to education, there was a lot of effort through the US aid to build capacity of teachers, to build capacity of different elements in the economy. But also in the agriculture sector, the US aid helped a lot more so in the post-harvest aspect of it. So I just wanted to put that out there. But of course, the concentration was on health because 70% of the total aid that was coming into the country was going into the health sector. Yeah, thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. 70% was going into the health sector. I mean, you have to imagine that. I find it quite notable that you are focusing on the research part and you are also emphasizing that more detailed assessment has to be done regarding the concerns that are voiced out because they are not well researched. We're coming to that. But now, since we mentioned the health sector, I would like to hear from people who are in the health sector. And that is Hekela and Ezekiel. How can you describe the first signs of practical changes that you had noticed since the announcement of the USAID withdrawal? Like, you were in the field. What did you notice? Hekela, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. So for us, we've been receiving funds from USAID. We have the Afya Yangu project, which receives direct funding from USAID. So after the shutdown notice or after the stop order, first of all, people were shocked because it came as something nobody expected that to happen. We never expected that to happen. So it caused shocks to projects or to people working in the USAID Afya Yangu project, because it came as something of surprise. So from the people who are receiving medical services at health facilities, the fear came in. They were not sure if the medication will still be there or there'll be changes. And also for staff who were told to stop working, they weren't prepared. So it kind of shocked them, and they were not sure if they will be paid or what will come next, what will be the answers, or what will come after the stop order. So it came with a lot of shocks. People from employees to other people who are receiving services at health facilities, it came as something which was not expected. So we were still working with those people, telling them that we are still waiting for USAID to come and say what will be going on after the stop order, so that they become comfortable and wait for the answers. And because the medical supplies didn't stop, so when they went to the health facilities, they still received medications and advice. However, the services were not as they used to be, because a lot of staff were not working, a lot of people were not working. So we were still working with them and just providing the information that we had to make them comfortable and confident that the services will still be there. However, USAID will not be supporting the government. It will still support with the medication, because the worries, a lot of worries were in terms of medications. For the people receiving ARVs, they were not sure if the medications will still be there. So it was something we needed to speak to them and at least tell them that the government will still support, even if USAID will stop the funding, but the government will always find a way to support the medication.
Okay, thank you very much. Ezekiel, do you want to contribute on that? Share your experience?
Yes, of course. My colleagues say about HIV, but also this we worked with HIV and TB. Also, we serve as a TB, the grant who given IPT or TPT means TB prevention therapy. Also, they are shocked, that this project fund also to eliminate TB and leprosy.
So just one more question to clarify this. You, Hekela and Ezekiel, you're telling me the shocks and fears were bigger than what actually happened. It did not stop suddenly. Where were the changes that happened? Did USAID clarify it and tell you when the changes will happen, when the stop will take place?
Of course, we shocked this happened suddenly. No one expected, no one prepared for it. So we shocked, but medication on the facilities were still going on. But, for example, our project recruit a lot of people from the ground. We have these people called providers. The provider also who help us to retain people who lost to medication. Also, always they are doing calling back to the service, to the people who forget about their appointment days. So everyone shocked, but the medication we are not stopped.
Yes, adding on what Ezekiel said, because we were told that it was 90 days stop order. So after 90 days, we were waiting what will come after the end of 90 days. So we had to calm down the clients, we call them clients, or people who are on ART, that we have to be patient and wait for the 90 days evaluation, or after they have finished their evaluation, we hope they will come with something that either we continue or we stop. So for the time being, let's just keep on coming to the facility. The medications are there. However, some services changed because they used to be reminded going to the facilities. There were outreaches reaching the interior areas. They were supplied with medication from the places where they are, at the places where there are no health facilities. So they were doing outreach services. So the outreach services are a bit stoppy. Some of them were required to go to the mother facilities or the facilities nearby them, but they weren't used to that. They just used to be given the medication at their localities. So with that, the shock even increased, that if we are told to go back to the mother facility, then this might be the situation going forward, or it might change. So everyone was uncertain what will come next. But we still insisted that we need to at least have our medications, have our ARVs, and let's wait for the 90 days, and then we'll see what will come next.
Yeah. Now, having this fear in mind and this uncertainty, and you can't do anything about it, do you see any opportunities for Tanzania, for the nation or the region to start taking matters in its own hands, to having their own programs that do not depend on foreign aid, so that there is more assurance and this kind of fear is no longer there? Do you see any opportunity? And if yes, what kind of opportunities?
Yes, of course, we see a potential. You know that as our government or NGO, sometimes we're supposed to stand by our own foot, not depend too much to donors and funders. And this will help us in the future. If donors cease to give us a fund, I can say that we need to stand by our own footing to the future. But you know, sometimes the implication of cessation of fund suddenly, of course, it gives us a big implication to implement activities.
Adding to that, I can say that the US shutting its project, it's a turning point to us as a country. The government maybe needs to increase the investment of in its sectors, or for the case of HIV and AIDS. So it's high time the government thinks of how can we ensure the availability of every resources that we need to make sure the HIV and AIDS will still be on, or will still be available with or without donors. So it's high time for our government and for NGOs also to see other possibilities of having our own funds. So in case the donor did not continue to support, we have our own sources or our own strategies that will keep us moving on even if there are no donors, instead of depending higher to donors. So with this, we have learned that donor funding are not reliable. Anytime another leader comes in, he or she may come with policies, rules, and priorities. So anytime the funds might stop, as a country, we need to have our own means of sustaining these projects or the sectors that we are working with, so instead of depending to donors.
I would still like to ask if it had crossed the nation's mind to maybe approach other donors to step in.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I am in a very good position to clearly say that, but I think with this, there's something changed to our government. Maybe James and Richard could chip in on this, but I think with this, there's a very huge learning out of this situation, because we weren't prepared, but the government still struggled to find ways to make sure the ART, the ARV services still is available at his facilities. So I think with this, there's something the government has learned and will maybe take the precautions moving forward.
Let me pose now the question to our two researchers. I'm sure they also have something to add into this. James and Richard, could you maybe give your views on these risks, but also the opportunity part? And I would also like to add a question that has been typed into the chat, how you think the US will lose out in terms of reliability by discontinuing the US aid, and what economic impact could this also have on US aid?
Okay, so I'll just start off, and I think James then will come in. I think in terms of risks, we were able to highlight a number of areas where we think we saw potential risks in the health sector, risk of closures of potential clinics, given that the funding will be reduced. I think there was concern around issues of ARVs, as Hekela had said, and Ezekiel. In terms of education, there's a lot of concern around cuts to teacher training, infrastructure development, quality learning materials. In terms of agriculture, there was concern of impact on smallholder farmers, given that the funding from the USAID had supported a lot of post-harvest activities. And in terms of opportunities, we'll just echo what Hekela and Ezekiel had said. There is a need at this point now to increase domestic revenue mobilization. And perhaps what would that mean? That would probably mean we have to see a way of how do we broaden the tax base. Also, there are other avenues where we could try to exploit. I think there's an effort being made to encourage PPP, public-private partnerships. It is obvious that the government cannot do everything, and more so this has come as a shock. So there is a need, I guess, for the government and the private sector to see how they can collaborate in that effort in filling some of the gaps that were caused by the withdrawal of the US aid. There is also now a call for, or a need for, to look at how do we spend more efficiently and how do we diversify development partners. And perhaps this speaks to the other question that you had asked, who can we collaborate with? I would say the approach that the government is taking at the moment is not purely based on what it can do by itself, but rather what it can do with the private sector. And as well as the bilateral partners and the multilateral partners, there are still other countries that continue to provide funding. There's the UK, there's Germany, there is China, there is India, and there's some multilateral organizations, the Brentwood institutions, there's World Bank, there's IMF. So there is still a great deal of support, but we cannot deny that the USAID provided the greatest funding, and there is a gap to fill. But the engagement of these stakeholders is imperative to come out of this gap that we're in. We could also see how we take advantage of different philanthropies that are interested in supporting the different initiatives. A lot of the US funding was going into the NGO space, and therefore sometimes it is difficult for the government to provide funding directly to NGO activities, given that the laws prohibit governments giving money directly to the NGO to give them some sort of independence. So there are opportunities, and we could look at these actors, bilateral, multilateral, philanthropies, as well as public-private partnerships as an opportunity to try to fill in the gap. Let me also welcome James to provide some additions.
I see three opportunities ahead for what has happened. First of all is the reassessment of the aid dependence. We need to take a deeper analysis and assessment on the extent of the dependence of the aid. And this will give us the opportunity now to prepare a strategy on how we can handle such shocks when they happen in the later stage. We are aware that when COVID came in, we were not prepared. So we had a lesson, but we also need to learn and do a conclusion out of this shock from the aid freeze. But at the same time, an opportunities on the collaborative funding initiatives, where we need to strategize and see how we can come together and start joint funding. We have to start out to fund on the production of the drugs, funding some of the key activities of the programs and projects. We know that the projects like Afya, Yangu, and the Kasindi and also the other projects that have been funded, I think key now, based on the fact that USAID has changed or will change their alignment to this funding. we still need to take them forward. So we need to create joint financing from internally and also the neighboring countries, and even Africa itself can come together and see how we can jointly finance ourselves, and while preparing the exit strategy to the foreign aid. But also in terms of the discussion of funding sources, that goes together in the sense of seeing where we can collect from multiple sources rather than depending on the foreign aid. We understand that US is just a wake-up call. We are not sure about the other countries, what will react, because things change in time. So I think those are the things that we need to look into as a country and also other partner countries that are close to Tanzania. But also the focus on long-term sustainability to assure that we are stable for beyond our yearly budgets. And we need to strategize and come out with a long-term plan.
Just to perhaps answer the question that was in the chat with respect to how do you think the US will lose out in terms of reliability, sympathy, and similar factors continuing this aid, and what impact could this have? Definitely, that the US will lose out of trust. I think part of the reasoning behind having the US aid was for the US to have influence and to build trust with the communities of countries such as ours, developing countries. But when it is pulled out abruptly, more so in social provision, social service delivery projects that directly touch the people, I think that in a sense might break trust and may maybe governments, present governments and future governments will not look upon the US as reliable partners, given that the shock factor is directly inflicted upon the people. In terms of economic impact, I think I would welcome Patrick to also read our policy advisory. We spoke about the macroeconomic impact that it would have. As we had said earlier on, when we were doing the abstract in the beginning, the US, as of recent years, has been bringing about 450 million USD into the country. And we feel that this not coming into the economy anymore would have some impact, would cause some fiscal pressures for the government, and would affect the foreign reserves of the country to a certain degree. And that might also lead in a way to increase the costs, given that foreign currency reserves would have reduced in the country. So I just wanted to put that out there.
There's another question. Perhaps you can tackle this one. Before, we have heard what the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, they plan to step in to compensate some of the cuts. Have you also heard about this? At the same time, many people in Africa mistrust the Gates Foundation because of several conspiracy theories that are circulating. What is your take on that, if you are aware of this?
We are aware of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They have done a lot of work in the health sector, in the research sector as well, in aspects of capacity building. Of course, it is true. Their reputation as of recent years is a bit controversial. So I think there is a certain degree of reluctance from stakeholders, but to what degree would they be able to fill in this gap? That is unknown. But I think any sort of aid, as I was presenting the kind of opportunities, that would be possible. To have a philanthropy organization such as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation would help in a certain way. But I think they have a certain way to go to rebuild some of the trust which has been peeled off due to misinformation. I think that I'll leave it at that.
Remaining on this strategic part or the potentials, we had conducted a previous interview with a lady from Malawi who had, you might find similar views concerning the sudden aid stops. Now we're going to hear this part. Yes, we're going to watch a short clip on her view. And are there maybe also some voices that are saying, now this is the time for us to start being more independent rather than so much dependent?
Yeah, we've seen Ibrahim Traore, who's like now saying that, you know what, for Africans right now, let's start using the resources that we have now to create better resources for ourselves. So in as much as these cuts are there, why don't we then also start to look inward? And also, what is the role of our multilateral bodies? We've got AU, we've got ECOWAS, we've got SADC. What roles do they have to play now? I know for my country, trade-wise, they said, can we try to buy Malawi more so that we can also make our produce more? Find ways to export, maybe reducing the bans for export. We can try to explore the African Free Trade Continental Area, build more from within and engage each other in better trade. It also could be ideal to have open borders to each other in sense of trade, in sense of access. But sometimes it kind of feels like within ourselves, we've actually put in hurdles and curbs that we fail to navigate within the continent. We can't just expect now other countries to pull in. We need to now start developing strategies, implementable strategies, not just paper-based strategies of how we are going to mitigate this, and also do a risk assessment and proper SWOT analysis, like for our countries, for the region. Where can we draw opportunities? What are our strengths? So we already have things that we unlock ourselves and move out of poverty. Not only that, but also build systems that are strong against corruption. We can say Africa should then only rely on donors. We can say that they should now come and just fill the gap. We also now need to start seeing which parts of the holes in the gap can we fill for ourselves, and then have the other partners come in.
So yeah, these are some other perspectives we wanted to share with you, and you might agree with me that they're in line with what most of you said or mentioned. I see James is nodding. And Richard, do you want to add something to it?
I think what our colleague has said is much as exactly what we have been discussing here. It impacts the same almost to other countries. So what she was insisting on is more like what we have been discussing here. So I compliment to that.
I think there's a question here. How much is the current government funding for health, also in comparison with Abuja Declaration and the agreement of 15% GDP for funding the health sector that's directed to Tanzania? Are there 15% discussed in the country? Did I rightly understand that you, Richard, mentioned that funding from government cannot be given to the NGO? So here are two questions.
Let me address the second one with regards to government funding NGOs. I think maybe if James wants to tackle the first one, he will. The way the regulations of the government are, they can provide in most cases limited funding to non-government entities. I know in most cases they have a limit cap of 10% of budget. Not that they don't finance it 100%. There's a limit that they could give to NGOs according to the laws that they have in place. We don't have the accurate statistics at the moment, but with respect to the area that has been most impacted, that is the health sector, what we know is that the government had reassured, and I think this has been echoed by Hekela and Ezekiel, that essential medicines continue to be provided, RVs and things of the sort. They continue to be provided even though the funding has ceased. So the essential medicine provision is there. But also, if you look at the budget of the Ministry of Health, at least for the last 4 or 5 years, you see that there's been a significant increase, almost doubling, I think, over the years. The health budget has been increasing significantly annually, at least for the last 4 years. We just want to put that out.
Yeah, so from the audience to the audience, this is your opportunity to write your questions in the chat. We are left with a few minutes, and I'm about to let our speakers give out their final remarks. And maybe if you want to give out a message to donors, you can also feed it in. So, Hekela, can I start with you if you want to give your closing remarks on this topic, the effects, the opportunities, the risks, and the way forward?
Coming up to this discussion, for us as NGOs, for us as a country, this is a wake-up call, and it starts with our government, and us as actors of development, we have a very big role to play, making sure the government integrate these services into national systems and policies for a long-term sustainability of HIV and AIDS. Because where we were at a very good position, reaching the UNAIDS 95, that the 95 of people living with HIV have known their status, and at least 95 of people who know their status have started ART services. And the last 95, at least 95% of people living with HIV are virally suppressed. So as a country, we were almost there, reaching the 395. So most of them we were above 95. So we were at a very good position in dealing with HIV and AIDS. But with this stop order, we might get back to where we were at previous years, because now people will not be supported as they expected, because their services, their employees who are employed by USAID are no longer working in health facilities. Their projects shut down, but also their services that people used to receive, they might no longer be supported. They used to be reminded to get to the health facilities, taking medications, but recently there has been no phone calls, no follow-up, so people are just staying at home waiting for the phone call to remind them to go back to the facilities for ART dispensing. We are seeing a risk of increased new infections, because people now are kind of loose, waiting for reminders and some sort. It's an alert that we might get back to the era where high new infections were a lot. So this might be also a risky, but we don't have the data. However, for us implementing the Afya Yangu project, we have a lot of numbers of people missing their refill dates. They are not going to the facility on time. And we see the risk of a lot of people having high viral load because of bad adherence. So this is a risk that we are seeing. If we resume with the project, we have a lot to do, making sure that we reach where we were before the shutdown. So it's high time for us as Tanzanians, for us as NGOs, finding other ways of diversifying our sources of funding or our sources of sustaining our NGOs, and making sure that even if the donor is not there, we will still support the communities in terms of the services they used to receive, so that there will no longer be a break chain in between, because the donor is no more supporting the community. So us as NGOs, it's high time to see where we can improve in terms of diversifying sources of funding and advocating the government to integrate the HIV/AIDS services into the national systems and policies, that to have a sustainability programs.
Thank you very much, Hekela, for these positive future thoughts. I would like to invite Ezekiel to also briefly say your views, and later on I would ask James and Richard to also address the fear that has been voiced out in the chat now by Dr. Masenge.
Okay, thank you. In this situation, we're asking to the donors not to, we suppose donors supposed to build our capacity until when we have ability to stand alone. You know, this is shut down suddenly. Just for an example, before stop order, pediatric, lost to follow up pediatric, we had were 11. But after this waiver, Richard is 64. This is all for this 90 days of waiver. So this is apart from PMTCT, prevention mother-to-child transmission. You know, USAID funding to this clinic, PMTCT, preventing mother-to-child, giving education to pregnant women and feeding women. We give them education concern about prevention of mother-to-child transmission, HIV. If donors hear me, please don't shoot down suddenly.
Okay,
Thank you.
That's a message out there. So, James and Richard, we are very short on time. Maybe you can keep it brief and precise, addressing also the question. I had to throw that in.
Thank you. James will respond to the question. We just wanted to thank you, for the opportunity to share our thinking. Also acknowledge that it's an issue and the impact is great and it's grave and it will take time to rectify. We see the impact more so in the social service provision and from a microeconomic perspective. There is a lot that all actors need to do to come together to try to remedy some of these things that have transpired as a result of the withdrawal funding from the US. I think I'll leave it at that and let James finalize.
Yeah, to me, it's just a word of thanks for this forum. It's an opportunity that various stakeholders are giving their views and the reality on the ground. So we have heard much about. On my side, it's an opportunity for the country and other stakeholders to come together and strategize on the move forward after this freeze. So following whatever has happened, we still have to move forward. At least on the response to what Dr. Masenge has asked, as far as I know, is the government has made a commitment that there will be availability of the drugs throughout the time. So we are yet to hear about the budget from the Ministry of Health, but I'm sure they will consider this effectively and seriously as far as HIV is one of the key issues that everybody is watching over.
Wow, thank you so much. Just 1 minute past the time. It's been great to have these experts here on this forum, the NetTalk. I think you've been able to shed light in different perspectives and also give hope with a fear that has been lingered in all of us, that despite of all these difficulties, there are still opportunities and ways, strategies, and the resilience it has to go on. That is wonderful. Thank you so much. And with this, we're coming to the end of our NetTalk.